Apparently, I don't have my hearing aid turned up either this morning from way back there. But it's my pleasure to introduce Crystal Perry. She's the Community Education Director at YWCA York, which is the sole provider of support services for victims of sexual assault, domestic violence, and human trafficking in York County. She also chairs the York County Human Trafficking Task Force, working to raise awareness and educate South Central Pennsylvania on trafficking. With over 14 years of experience supporting survivors, Crystal is committed to compassionate, individualized care tailored to each client's unique needs and background, and she leads ongoing training, provides case support, and ensures that the YWCA of York and task force members uphold the highest standards in their work. So please join me in welcoming Crystal Perry this morning. Okay, well, I'm sorry I don't have, so please welcome Paula. Yes, welcome up. You get this handy dandy thing that you can clip to yourself. Okay. And then here's the
kind of high on your sweater.
I'm not doing that part.
Okay.
All right. Good morning.
Morning.
Coming up. Hi. I'm Paula Copeland. I'm the Chief Services Officer for the YWCA York. Crystal will be doing the presentation on human trafficking, but I wanted to take an opportunity to tell you about the Y itself, the YWCA, and our mission. Our mission is to empower women and to eliminate racism. We have a very comprehensive program that deals not only with victim services, but we have the largest child care provider within York. We have a very active racial justice committee. We also have a very strong aquatics program. We have a yoga program, and we just do a lot of interaction with the community. We have Race Against Racism coming up on April the 26th. We should have brought information about the Race Against Racism, but we did, and then we'll make sure that we'll provide either Andrea or Elizabeth, someone with that information. I do have cards that I'll leave here for anyone that wants to be involved. We welcome volunteers into the Y and with the Y at all times. I want to tell you a little bit about victim services, where we are a very comprehensive program, the only comprehensive program in York County, and we deal with victim services on 4 fronts. The one front that we deal with is our residential program. We have an emergency shelter as well as transitional shelter. Our emergency shelter is meant for those who are in imminent danger. Our transitional shelter is also known as bridge housing. And within bridge housing, a person can stay there up to 24 months as they stabilize their life and so that they can move on into permanent secure housing. We also have a counseling center. Our counseling center we deal with victims of violent crimes. They can be sexualized in nature or not. It is free counseling services at a master counselor's level. The other program that we have is we have a legal team. We have a legal director as well as a staff attorney, a paralegal, and we employ up to 4 legal advocates. And in that team, they will take our survivors through whether it be following the establishment of a PFA, working with child custody, visitation rights, up to, unfortunately, some of our victims also become dependents, because it depends on the educational level of and the responding of when domestic violence occurs. There could be simple assault charges. So we're able to defend those on a magisterial level. So just wanted to tell you that we are a full program. While today we will be concentrating on human trafficking, that is just one of the things that we do within the YWCA York. Thank you for your time, and I'll turn it over to Crystal for the presentation.
Good morning, everyone. I tend to talk with my hands, so I have to put that on or else I'll end up winging it. So Paula went over our mission statement. This presentation tends to normally be around an hour. We're not taking that long. We don't have that time today, so I am going to go a little quickly through the slides. We're going to touch on the main points, what you really, everyone needs to know is a base knowledge. Uh-oh, I lost control.
Is that what you want, the trigger
What
warning?
trigger warnings?
Is that what you want?
Yep. So again, we're not going to dig too deeply into it, but it's going to be hard to hear. There's a lot of violence within human trafficking. So if, excuse me, if you start to feel some sort of way and you need to walk out, please do. Don't feel like you have to sit here and listen where you're feeling your emotions. So this is a really quick video. It's one I show at a lot of my presentations. It's getting on the older side now. I think it was in 2014, 2015. So some of her references to music and stuff are a little dated, but it is very much most of the victims that we see. It's a really good example. You might have to go to the top in video and do share sound.
Sorry.
Or it might be an audio, I'm sorry. I might be in one of them has a share sound option.
Not, we can skip it and you guys can always watch it later. That's fine. So it's called The Making of a Girl. If when you get home, you want to look it up, it's on YouTube. And she talks about how she's walking out of school and a guy approaches her. He's in a nice car and he gives her some attention and she leaves with him. And that night she's forced actually to work. So she talks about, you know, that night she wasn't when she got in the car originally, she wasn't thinking about him holding a gun to her head or the things he would make her do. She just was someone who wanted some attention and this person was giving it to her and she thought he looked like a fun, you know, let's go out and have a good time. So sex trafficking has a long federal definition. What you need to know is that it's the recruitment, harboring, transportation, or provision of a person for a commercial sex act. You need to prove force, fraud, or coercion to be able to have it go to trial. And basically, anybody 18 or older,
If they are forced to have sex with someone for anything of value, and whether it's through force, fraud, or coercion, that's sex trafficking.
Sorry.
So movement is not required, popped up. Before, a lot of people wouldn't press charge or wouldn't take it to court if they hadn't crossed some type of line, whether it was a state line, a county line, or a country line. They thought you had to be taken out of your original place to be called trafficking. That is not true. Most of our clients have never left their hometown. All of their trafficking has happened from a young age and they've never went anywhere. Labor trafficking is the exact same thing when you're talking about prosecution. But instead of sex, they're forced to do any type of labor, kitchen workers, janitorial staff. We see it a lot in agricultural. In Maryland, we had a huge bust on crab pickers. There was a lot of labor trafficking victims. So the commercial sexual exploitation of children is called CSEC. That has almost the same definition as sex trafficking, except force, fraud, or coercion is not required. Anybody under 18 that is forced to do any type of sexual act for anything of value can be charged. So this means if a child runs away and someone says to them, you can sleep on my couch if you have sex with me, that is trafficking. It can be charged. So anything of value. There's no such thing as survival sex when it comes to children. So it does happen in Pennsylvania. I've been here for 5 years and that's one of the questions we get often. It really happens here? It does. So whenever you have a state and major highways run through it, 95, 15, you have a higher risk of being trafficked. 95 is a huge one. A lot of gun trafficking and drug trafficking go up and down 95. Kind of starts in the Florida area, money ends up in the New York area, and then basically every state in between is where these people are doing their crimes. The difference between drugs and guns, they run out. So that person has to make that trip a lot and take, chances. With people, you pretty much get them one time and nobody's asking questions why you have a couple people in your car, right? Anywhere you have airports or truck stops. So a lot of times when truck drivers are going through states that maybe are not their home state, or people are traveling through areas, if you know you're not going to run into somebody going into a hotel with someone who is not your partner or somebody that's not appropriate, there's a higher chance that you would take those risks. So it happens a lot around airports and truck stops. Pennsylvania is a really good central location, like I said. So on that 95 corridor, Pennsylvania is a great stop. Tourism. So if you would have hear me talk 10, 15 years ago, I would say, oh, during the Super Bowl, human trafficking goes up. Tons of trafficking all the time on the big events. Last year, the National Human Trafficking Hotline did some research and found out it is not the big events, it's all events. There's alcohol involved, just like we see domestic violence rise during sporting events. Your team wins, your team loses. That person goes home, takes it out on their partner. Human trafficking is kind of the same way. But because of people like me, educators, talking to people about Super Bowls and World Series and all that, that's when people were looking more. So they were reporting it more. So it looked like it was happening. But it does happen on all sporting events. And then socioeconomic conditions. Pennsylvania has some of the richest of rich living next to the poorest of poor. When you have that imbalance of power, oftentimes somebody's getting taken advantage of. So every 3 years, the National Human Trafficking hotline updates this maps. This is all the calls that came in 2021, and the orange is the hot areas. So as you can see, that 95 corridor. I can't remember, somebody told me what that road is, but that's a big one. But you can see like the Pennsylvania area, we're very much in that area. Again, a lot of people think that trafficking is a snatch and grab, that's stranger danger. Growing up in the 80s, that's what I learned. Stranger danger, there's people in the white van and they would snatch you. Don't go to the bus stop alone, do the buddy system. It was very shortly after that stranger danger push that they realized that wasn't very helpful. Child abuse and things like that were happening within the home or someone close to a family, not snatches. Yes, it does happen, but it's not what you see the most. So the same thing happened with human trafficking. Somehow I got out of there that was like, oh, you got to be careful. If you're in Walmart, they're going to grab you and take you. 93% of all trafficking victims, their first trafficker was a family member. It starts within the home, within the neighborhood. Like I said, there are some snatch and grabs, but again, it's not what we see the most. We see a lot of that boyfriend-girlfriend situation. The nickname is a Romeo pimp. It's a really hard trafficker to get a client away from because generally it's people that really have never had that love in their life. So that person knew and preyed on them and told them I love them. And they also witnessed violence within the home. So when that trafficker hit them and then said, I loved you, that's what they grew up with. They thought that's what love is. So it's really hard to break that bond. Acquaintances is what we're kind of seeing in the middle high school area. So a trafficker recruits from whatever way, a young kid, and they could say, oh, we're having a party, bring some friends. So we see a lot of that in the acquaintance area. Employers, it's not just labor trafficking, obviously. So we had a college graduate who went on Craigslist and accepted a job as an in-home healthcare worker. When she got to the house, it was actually an abandoned house, and there was somebody waiting for her. So when I talk at colleges, I talk a lot about when you do a job interview, make sure it's at a real brick and mortar. Something is like in-home healthcare. If it's not with a legit company, a private person, you want to meet somewhere else. You want to meet that person first because you get a good judge. And then strangers. So that's that snatch and grab. It does happen, but like I said, it's not the one that we see the most. So these are just some stats. I'm going to go through them so we don't go through all of our time. So in 1998, a trafficker wrote a book, and it's called The Pimp Game. It was so popular, it was re-released in 2005. You can still buy it today. And this is a whole paragraph from it, but the one I always like to put out there is Malpamp put a price tag on the item you have manufactured. When I educate people that are working with victims, I talk about the fact that this is a item to this person. This is money. This is not a person to a trafficker. So it's very dangerous work because you're getting in between them and their money. So really making sure, and it also shows you, I always hear, I don't understand how they could do it. Why do they think that way? I don't know, because I don't think like that, but it shows you how they can detach and that's not a person. So the pimps basically have no rules when it comes to victims. They're allowed to do anything they want. There's nobody stopping them. They own that person. No one's going to stop them unless they come across law enforcement, an agency like ours, things like that. Everybody says, well, why do they do it? It's about the money. It is the second largest crime after drugs. And this is an actual bust that happened in Maryland. The gentleman had 6 women working for him, 2 sisters and niece, actually, of the 6. He was charged $140 a day to rent a room for the entire day by the hotel establishment. So then each person that came to purchase sex, he would charge $140 and tell them that was the price for the room. Then, I'm sorry, the date was $140 was for the room. So he was making $140 off of each girl, each room. $740 a day is basically what he was making, $3,700 a week, $192,000 a year. The thing that was very interesting about this bust, when they busted him, he was actually in debt. He had a really serious gambling problem. So that's what these women were like working towards, was his, you know, for his gambling. So where to find their victims? Like I said, within homes, within neighborhoods. Back in the day, before the internet was as big as it was, a trafficker would have to hit the streets. It was a lot of runaway youth. They would gain their trust and work on them. And if I am a trafficker and I walk up to you and I say, I'm a 14-year-old boy, you're gonna laugh at me, right? So they've really had to work hard. But now with the internet, they don't have to. And it's also not just runaway youth. You can have that perfect white picket fence Labrador retriever and a trafficker can still get in your home. I'm doing a tech training coming up soon and an AI and how traffickers are using AI to recruit. They can now change their voices to sound like a young child. They can change their faces. They can manipulate photos. So we have to talk to our children. This is not just broken children that it's affecting. It could be anybody's child. So if you guys, I don't know if you want to take pictures, these are some of the apps that are most used by traffickers, but we're not going to get into each one of them. Like I said, I want to make sure we get through everything. This is one, if you ever look at your kid's phone, this calculator app, most parents don't even think anything. It's a calculator, but when you go into it, it's a way to hide photos. So that is how they're getting through online. So a lot of the buyers, these are the stats on buyers. And what are the buyer rules? So the buyer only has one rule. They are not allowed to kill the victim. That's it. When that door shuts at a hotel, a motel, a house, a car, wherever it is, that person has all the control. As long as they don't kill the person, they have no issues with the trafficker. So these are the top 14 places that the National Human Trafficking reported were the highest reported of where they were being trafficked. So you can see it's like number 1, family home, buyer's home, church, office, flea market, truck stop, a barn or a shed, campsites, fields, prayer meetings, rodeos, hotels, motels, warehouses, and military bases. Who's at risk? Street youth is still. You don't see a lot of Amber Alerts for missing runaways. But if you go onto the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, there's pages upon pages of children missing in our country. You don't notice it. It's not something that's put out there constantly. Anybody that's been physically or sexually abused. The story I hear the most was, growing up, so-and-so did this to me against my will. So when I got the chance to run, I made the choice. Yes, I didn't really want to have sex with these people for stuff, but at least at this point, I'm making that choice and I'm getting something out of it. I was able to sleep somewhere, or I got, shoes or jewelry. And so they think, again, talking to these children is very hard because in their mind, they took that power and now they're making the choices. Anybody that witnessed violence at home, we talked about that. Mental health and substance abuse kind of go hand in hand. You're either targeted because of it and because you were an easier target. If someone is coming down off a high and a trafficker says, oh, well, if you go sleep with this person, I'll give you a hit. And they don't want to go through all that nastiness of, detoxing, they're going to do it. And then the flip side is if you don't have it, you will probably, by the time you're done, be in traffic. Because a lot of times traffickers will give the people the drugs at first to numb them to be able to do the action. And then once they're addicted, again, easier to control. Anybody with access to internet or social media can be a victim. Anybody living within poverty. Again, if you have to feed children or keep a roof over your children's head, there's a lot of things people won't do in order to do that. So again, if I have to pay my bills this way to keep my kids okay, I would do it. And then I'm an easier victim. So Black, Indigenous people of color and the LGBTQIA plus used to be on that high risk chart. We've recently removed it because being born this way does not make you a higher risk. Just because you are born in these groups, you're not high risk. It's all the isms, racism, sexism, homophobia. Those things are what put these populations at a higher risk, and they are the #1 most trafficked. So how do we identify victims? Anybody who's been physically or sexually abused. When I train doctors, nurses, we talk about vaginal and anal scarring. There's a lot of things that we can look for. It might not be it happened right this second. They could be coming for an STD or something like that, but let's look for it because these are indicators. Anybody that shows like fear, anxiety, depression, submission, hypovigilance. Again, this could also be domestic violence. So we're looking for these things. Truancy and tardiness from school, controlling dominating relationships, not in control of their own money. This person is stealing food to eat. They got arrested. Let's ask them questions. Why? Why are you stealing food? They could be working for somebody and that person's not giving them any money. Not dressed adequately for the time of the year. Language really matters when you're talking about trafficking. If I'm sitting here talking to you guys, I'm going to use the terms human trafficking victim. The reason is it defines what happened to that person rather than labeling them. If I sat up here and said, oh, prostitutes are higher risk and prostitute gives the thought to most people of they chose to do it. Growing up, when you saw a prostitute walk in a strip, at least in Maryland, as a kid, you knew what they were doing because the adults talked about it. And you think that's their choice. So we really want to use these terms. Now, we also use trafficker, exploiter, buyer, because pimp has been taken over by society as like a good thing. There's shows, Pimp My Ride, Pimp My House. Men have been labeled, oh, that guy's a pimp. He's great with the ladies, right? You can go online right now and order a pimp costume for you and your dog for Halloween. I actually have pictures in my phone because I was at Party City this year, not Party City, with the Halloween store. And I sent it to my new HT person. And I was like, look, see, this is what I'm talking about in trainings. Like, it's out there. So we want to use a trafficker, exploiter, buyer because it gives less social status. There is no miscommunication if you say this person's a human trafficker. So when we interact with them, we're treating them that they're more than their victimization. So many people just want to hear their story. We try hard not to have them give us their story. We don't need to know all of that. If they're in therapy and they share, that's one thing. But every time they tell their story, they're re-traumatizing themselves. They really believe no one cares or wants to help them. It has been put into their head by this trafficker so often. No one's going to believe you. No one's going to help you. I'm the only one that loves you. So we go above and beyond to prove that we want to help them. If you can figure out why they were targeted, was it love? Was it an addiction? Was it money? We start there. If we can stop that original root cause and help them fix that, the other than getting out of this life is a lot better. We teach them how to build connections. We always consider their safety and ours. You probably, if you've ever heard anything about domestic violence, you've heard about safety planning with an abuser. We do the same thing with trafficking victims and our staff, because again, we're becoming between them and their money. So, we talk about things. If you have a client, you're taking them to court, you're parking in garages with cameras and all the things and well lit, because it could be dangerous work, but also talking to the client and letting them lead their safety plan. They've kept themselves alive. We only serve adults. For at least 18 years, they've kept themselves alive. So we let them lead that safety plan. And never make promises you can't keep. I tell this a lot to the hospital staff because, we'll have somebody, oh, Crystal did a presentation. They have a lot of shelter options. It's okay. I'm going to call them. They're going to get you into shelter. You're going to be safe, and then they call and we don't have a bed available. You have now broken that trust. They don't believe you. You're going to lose them. So reframe that. Hey, listen, I know there's some options out there. Let me make some calls. Let's see what we can do, how we can help you. Again, meeting those original needs. So did they want to control their own body? Was their family doing it? Like they had no family, they have no social support. Let's build those connections. Let's get them involved in some community groups, churches, if that's what they want, whatever they want to build that system around them. Was it love or was it a fixed substance abuse? Again, we're addressing those issues. What are victims' rights when they're in the life? None. They have absolutely none. They don't have rights over their body, where they go, what they do, who they see, when they eat, if they eat. They have no rights. So a lot of people think success is, I saved someone. We hear a lot when people job interview with us. I want to save people. We can't save them. They have to save themselves. Success for us. Oh, I already went through that. Sorry. Success for us is we identified their risks. They might go back into the life once they leave us, but we've talked about that safety plan. And when you are ready to leave, what are you going to do? We make that connection. They know they can go back to the life 12 times. And on that 13th time, they can still call me and I'm not going to judge them. One of the stats I always put out there is the average domestic violence victim goes back to their abuser 7 times before they leave. The average trafficking victim goes back 9. So that bond is that strong. We build that rapport. We offer resources. YWCA, none of us can do it by themselves. We need other organizations, community members. We need all of us to be in this work if we're ever going to stop this. And I always want to make sure that person's felt safe with me and heard, because I guarantee you they probably never have in their life. So that's our human trafficking program. That's the very basis of very quick 101. Paula already talked about a lot of our options, things that we do. This is just them again. The York County Human Trafficking Task Force meets once a month. We have the FBI, we have local law enforcement, both of our hospitals, the Children's Advocacy Center, like any people that could come in contact with victims that are working in different fields, they're on our team. This is the National Trafficking Hotline. You can call, you can text, or you can do a live chat online. They have many ways for a person to call in and get help. And then what they do is if a person says, hey, I'm in Florida, I'm trafficked here, I think I want to go to Pennsylvania, that's a safe place. The trafficking hotline can pull up that we are on their list as one of those certified shelters, and they'll help that client get to us. They'll pay for their airfare or train or whatever. This is my information. Again, like I said, this was very quick. So if you ever want any more information, if you want information on domestic violence, sexual assault, my team is the community outreach team. We also have materials. If your business wants safety posters in their bathroom, reach out to me. We'll make sure you get them. And any way I can help, even if you just have a question, maybe you think someone you came across might be a victim of any of those things, we can talk through it. You said you want questions? Okay. Any questions?
So I've seen cases reported in the local papers. Often it seems that the victims are from foreign countries, particularly Asian countries, and that's what you tend to think of. Do you see that, and is that group of the population part of who you provide services to?
We do. Unfortunately, the news and the papers, that's the ones they want to report on because that's like that high profile, you know. So in the last 2 years, we've had 2 massage parlor busts that have been pretty successful. Our local law enforcement is doing an amazing job. But so they're the ones that kind of get that publicity. We do see them. We do help them. One of the massage parlor victims of the last bus actually came with us. We helped out. We did some services. She did ultimately go back, but most of the people we help are people in this community or other states that they can't stay in that state because it's not safe. So we'll kind of like, oh, we have somebody from PA that wants to go somewhere else and somebody that from somewhere else that wants to go here. So we'll get a lot of out of state.
If you could get Rosalie for that, so you're hearing from me. All I know is what I hear from you, what I read, but not aware of the fact that it is much more local population problem than immigrants. And shame on whatever it's not publicized, it should be.
Well, there's still a lot of misbelief that that's all it is. So, and then again, I think some of the people want to hear about people brought from other countries against their will, forced to do things. And I can tell you stories, labor or sex trafficking in them that I've worked with. They don't want to hear about the lady down the street, again, who lost her job, had 4 kids, and started selling herself to keep a roof over their head. And then a trafficker came along and took that choice away, forced her to do it. They don't want to know that's happening in their community, right? It's easier to push it.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah. Did you think of one email?
Crystal, if you would, can you just stay up here for a second? Obviously not an easy subject and a great way to start off our Tuesday morning, but certainly educational and something I think we all need to be aware of and hear about. So thank you very much for your presentation. In recognition of your presentation, we're going to actually donate a book to a local children's library. So if you would, we're going to get a photo if you don't mind. Yes, yes. So our website.
We can't do any of the work that we do without YouTube.
The money man.
So give them a round of applause. Does anybody have anything else for the good of the group? If not, I'm going to ask you all before we do close, just a reminder that invitations for prospective members, if you can go into that website that's been emailed out and just fill out the information and then follow up with those people, we should have hopefully we have a good turnout for our membership breakfast on April the 29th. So just keep that in mind. We're going to keep drilling that home. If there's nothing else, I hope that everybody has a great week. We'll see you again next week.